functions.
At least checking the other move. What? This edge allocation is what you guys saw, right? Rafiq, Eric, and oh, you team lead. You didn't see the original on the Leuven not here. Leuven lead. As check the design in 65 minutes, it's but then now it's obviously not 5 minutes. I don't know, man. Come on, guys, let's go to come on! So we have found our final judge. He is running here. Lord. Make a difference, bro. Yes. Okay. So that's why you're late to the check. TP is thinking that's the share check you want to do as well.
Hi everyone, welcome to the free series. Previous level for breaking. Let's get right ahead on the motion. Yeah, okay, you guys have the motion. I just invite the Prime Minister to start debating here. Can I feel the bell?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, we think that the biggest problem with immigrant influxes today is that those immigrants retain an identity that is fundamentally different and diverse, right? Fundamentally dissonant from the national identity of the locals, right?
Yeah.
To the extent that the main problems that arise from immigrant influxes is that identity dissonance creates a sort of tension and a sort of us versus them mentality then we tell you that the most important thing is to disperse and dissipate that identity and assimilate these people into a more national identity instead of an immigrant identity that is often drawn along like ethnic or proto-ethnic lines, right? So we tell you that that is more important, right? Because of a number of reasons. Number one, it allows for better immigrant integration, which means that your immigrants are actually looked after better and can live more meaningfully to the extent that they are not viewed as threats by the local community. But it also allows for the local community to live in greater peace because they don't look at immigrants as threats anymore, right? So it works on a two-way basis and it works to the fundamental benefit of both of those people. So before I go into that exactly, let's talk about how it is that the presence of immigrant enclaves creates like particularly pernicious that dissonance and exacerbates that dissonance that I was talking about. Right? Mr. Speaker, let's talk about culturally diverse countries. Culturally diverse countries, by definition, already have like various ethnicities within them, right? Including like ethnic diasporas, right? So the problem with these culturally diverse countries is that they already share an understanding of what it means to have both ethnic and national identities, right? When an immigrant comes into that country and there is an immigrant enclave, and that immigrant enclave has a strong visceral, like is viewed as a visceral threat, then that threat, because they are allowed to exist in those immigrant enclaves, which necessarily means that they are allowed to perpetuate within those immigrant enclaves without assimilating to the rest of society, without like dispersing or dissipating with the rest of society, meaning that they continue in those enclaves for like second and third generations as well, because it's easier to do. It's easier to live in those alienated communities because they are culturally much more similar to you in the rest of society. You don't have to bleed out into the rest of society, right? So these enclaves will perpetuate. Then what happens is that these people are viewed as like fundamentally an other, even by people who are of essentially the same ethnicity, who are already citizens of that particular country, right? So the problem with that is this, that when I'm no longer allowed to feel a sense of kinship with you along ethnic lines, then we draw the lines along what is nationality, right? What is really like someone's nationality, and how does that work? It means basically that I'm allowed to that a large number of Singaporean Indians then believe that like Indian Indians are fundamentally different, right? And that's not drawn along ethnic lines. So my source is drawn along like national lines, right? So we exacerbate the idea of I am Singaporean and you are not. What the particularly pernicious part of that is that it disavows these immigrants from ever gaining the identity of being Singaporean, right? Even if they actually eventually become citizens in their second and third generations, because they have a fundamentally like different identity, right? Go, what?
What's your model for breaking up conflicts? Are you forcibly going to move them? Who pays for the movement?
Oh yeah, sure. So like we'll do it like exactly the way Singapore did it when it was first formed. So we will split them all up. We'll have racial quota housing. You are forced to stay in like you have like the little communities where you're forced to stay in these areas. It's also not very unfeasible. It's been done before, literally, right? So like to the point that that means, right, that back to my point, that as long as you are like fundamentally looked upon as another, right, and are not allowed to engage in my national identity, then that means that you are forced to rely upon an immigrant identity. And that immigrant identity becomes your primary identity that you are judged by, right? That means that automatically you are alienated within that society, and that alienation continues, right? So you're not allowed to integrate to the extent that we look upon you always as another, right? That your race means that you are not allowed to subscribe to my national identity, because that is the only real discerning factor between you and me. And that is what diasporas use to differentiate themselves, right? To the extent that you are not looked upon as a threat when you are culturally split, when you are demographically split up, then that threat dissipates in the eyes of the locals, right? And you're allowed to assimilate it as a national identity. It actually allows for immigrants to buy into the national identity quicker and then contribute into that national identity, right? Because they are looked upon as functioning members of this particular nation instead of alien outsiders who are here to threaten our jobs, or alien outsiders who are here to take our opportunities away, right? That us versus them mentality is fundamentally eroded the minute you take away the demographic strength in a particular area. But now to move on to the idea of how it is that these people work as an electoral threat, right? And why that political voice that they have can become a source of contention and a source of problem for locals, right? But yeah, sure.
Given that many of these immigrants are able to interact with the majority of society in school and work, why must the construction of a national identity?
Yeah, precisely.
Sure.
So the problem, right, is that when they interact in school and work, then those are precisely the areas and outlets where we can discriminate them as others because they live in a different area and they are fundamentally of a different community from my own community. Those are merely become outlets of discrimination instead of bonding areas, because they are not the most intimate areas of housing, right? Which is housing, which is basically like where you live in the communities that you create, right? Those are more important than school and work, which are like areas where you go and then later you go back to another community, or you go home to a different community. That's the problem. Now, moving into this idea of electoral threats and why it's a problem for everyone, right? Both locals and immigrants. We tell you that number one, the minute that immigrants are looked upon as an electoral threat because they live in a particular study and we are in a particular demographic. And here it's important to recognize that oftentimes these immigrant enclaves stay past second and third generation, so then become citizens as well, and then gain voting power. Is that the minute that these people are thought to have a political voice, whether or not it is true, whether or not it's perceived or actual, right, that can swing the vote within a particular constituency, then they are looked upon as an extant threat to the so-called the locals within that community, right? The ones who have been there for more generations, the ones who are not of immigrant descent and not of that particular enclave, right? Then at that point, that they had that kind of disproportionate power within the country to swing a political vote, then the locals feel threatened and feel that that these people are literally taking away not only their jobs and opportunities, but also their political voice, right? We tell you that the minute you dissipate them and you split them across constituencies, then they lose that disproportionate power to swing votes, right? And to the extent that these people still can have their needs met, and to the extent that when they are not looked upon as threats, they are still allowed to engage in their cultural practices privately, then we do not think that there is a big threat to them losing that immigrant political voice and assimilating to a national political voice and gaining that national representation instead, right? So that comes at no great threat to immigrants, but it comes at the cost of putting locals at peace to a much greater degree. But moving to the idea of like preventing the formation of ethnic ghettos as well, right? Mr. Speaker, when you have like an ethnic constituency, then what happens is that it is much easier to politically pander to this ethnic constituency using ethnic lines, right, instead of nationalistic lines. This creates like greater dissonance as well, because political parties are incentivized to do that, but at the cost of being like ostracized by the general state political level, right? And we tell you that creates ethnic ghettos that are fundamentally harmful as well, because it works both to the benefit of immigrants and proper local and like actual locals. Like we are happy to propose.
The speech and now we the legal option, start case option. Here.
Opening opposition, we believe in the idea of diversity, and we believe in the value of integration. But what we would contend coming from opening opposition is that it does not happen on government side. When you forcibly break up enclaves, when you make people who feel safe and comfortable in those homes already leave and relocate without ever explaining why. Especially because we cannot promise that they will not be discriminated. We cannot promise their safety because not everyone wants to move. And for those who are willing to do so, what we would say is that we can make it easier for them. We can give them incentives. Like the first thing that we're willing to do is maybe give housing grants to them or give them cheaper real estate taxes in other places or locations. And these things can get extended to immigrants because we want these people to have a choice. If they choose to stay, it is perfectly valid on our side. And if we choose to leave, then we can make it possible for them. Because when you're talking about the context as to why these people left in the first place, they're usually because of bad situations. Like they might not have been able to get money in that area, or maybe they just had a bad government. What they're doing on their side is putting them in just as bad locations that they wanted to get out of in the first place. Which is the reason why we have to launch into our rebuttals right now. Please sit down. The first thing that we're going to say is, when exactly did these immigrants accept that they had to take on this national identity in the first place? They never said that, you know what, I'm going to go here for money, but then automatically I have to seem like a national Singaporean or I have to seem like a national American. Because a lot of times these people still feel very strongly to their roots. They never really explain why exactly you had to let go of these things. Because just because you change locations, that does not mean you have to change your personality and yourself as well. The second thing that we would have to say is that when you look at their model, we think that it actually doesn't make sense. Because the Singapore model worked back then and age old time, 51 years ago, because you had a lot of land back then. Now, first of all, you're talking about immigration. Who exactly are you going to make pay for it? We think that it's harmful whether or not you make the government or when you make the immigrants pay. Because first thing, if the immigrants pay, then that means land is already extremely expensive in most areas, right? So that means that they cannot afford it. So the reason why they went there in the first place was because they were poor. So now it's worse because you make them even more vulnerable because you cannot afford to live in those places anymore. Second thing is if the government pays for it. He already said that, you know what, there's already a lot of resentment coming from these individuals, coming from the majority in the first place. We think that it increases the rhetoric that they should not be there because they're actually stealing their land. The reason why this is important is because we think that it's actually false that they say that they're protecting immigrants, are actually making it worse on their side. The rest of the rebuttals will be integrated. The first thing I'm going to say is that on-place integration is actually likely to occur better under our model. Because while we admit that exposure is needed to change minds, like the Americans, the French, the British, they need to be willing to, they need to interact with these people. We think that the only way that interaction happens is when people are comfortable with interacting in the first place. Because when you're forcibly made to move, the chances are you do not feel ready to interact. You do not feel comfortable going out of your house and making friends with your neighbors, right? Because if you were ready to make that move, then you would have already moved on our side anyways. Why exactly don't these people feel comfortable? Because they're seen as an other in society, just like what they said. And what happens when you visibly close off? It reinforces the mindset that they are different from you, even if they are within your own neighborhood. And the reason why this is important is because you can't necessarily just fight off discrimination. First off, it's insidious, so it's hard to spot. Second thing is there are lots of cases when immigrants are just scared to report because they don't want the legal battle, they don't want to get into trouble. The third thing is police and officials historically just haven't been all that nice to immigrants, so why would they report it anyways? So given all of these problems happening under status quo, we don't see why relocating them would actually just make it better. What exactly does this mean when you relocate when they are not ready? You're putting these immigrants in a position where they cannot fight back, where they're scared to speak out because you have no community to turn to, because you feel like you're on someone else's land, as opposed to when you were in enclave and you could go back to your community, you could go back to someone, to a place where you felt that you were actually at home. So the first thing that's important from this argument is that you leave them to become more vulnerable. The second thing is interaction doesn't happen as great as what they want it to be. What we would suggest is that it's actually better when the immigrants that move are actually the ones that feel comfortable with moving, and it's better when they choose to do so. Before we go on, closing.
So opening gave us a Singaporean model where we never forcibly evicted people from their homes or used violence. We simply paid them a fair price for their homes and then gave them subsidized housing in HDB flats. I don't understand why that's particularly problematic.
No, he said you would forcibly break up enclaves, right? Meaning that you will relocate these types of these people, and that you will that they aren't allowed to live together. So if you're gonna shaft your closing, it's pretty bad to do it in a BOI. Let's go on to the second. Your opening, sorry. Let's go on to the second argument as to how enclaves are actually of value when it comes to practicing cultural and religious norms of a certain society. Because we already told you coming from a while ago that immigrants never really contended to lose their personality. And when you break up enclaves, it means that parts of your life that you wanted to practice, you cannot practice anymore. So you let certain parts of yourself go in order to be part of the nationalistic identity. Why exactly is this important? Because coming from the previous speaker's speech, you already saw a concession that he said that they were already looked at as a threat. So this means that they're probably not going to be treated well in the first place. But second thing is, we don't think that it's bad that they have political power. They never really said why those things were wrong. So what you're doing is you're actually disempowering individuals, which he already conceded to in his argument. That's not a really good thing for humanity in general. Because that's not why exactly an immigrant decided to leave in the first place. Because it might be personal finances, it might be personal reasons as to you just couldn't live under your government anymore because they were just so damn corrupt. But then what happens here is usually you were not able to practice your identity in the fullest capacity. And what happens when you force another location upon them? We think that it becomes the same scenario as to why they left. They were not comfortable in the situations they used to be before. So you're transferring them from one place to another that was just as bad in the first place. Because while to an extent we would say that enclaves are actually valuable because it provides safe spaces for people to practice traditions, to practice themselves where no one is judging or no one is prosecuting them. Because you come from the same place, because you come from the same background. And it's important, while we say that it's not, let's question, is it really important that the rest of society understands these situations? or these cultural practices. We would say it is preferable, but then we don't think it's completely necessary. What's the most important thing here is that you actually have safe space for these individuals to practice in the first place. So in the very worst case, if they don't understand, we're completely fine with that. Because it could be as little as things like people wondering why you're praying so often, or even as a Filipino, you're wondering why your dishes are so odd and so weird. That makes you not want to cook those dishes, that makes you not want to pray that often or in public. It makes you scared of your identity. And as an immigrant, you should never feel that way. You should never feel uncomfortable in a situation, which is what they're doing on their side. They give you this false hope that everything will get better without ever really explaining it. The answer is it won't. Side with opening opposition. Thank you.
Thank you. For speech, I now invite the Prime Minister to the case of government.
To opening opposition, I have one piece of advice: striding the motion in its time. What does a culturally diverse location actually look like? The one that we tend to live in right now. Within this country, we already have multiple different people, multiple different groups of people following different cultural backgrounds. Right? Different people cook curry in the house. Some people cook like Indian curry chicken. Some people cook nasi lemak. Right? We don't think people are going to get upset because the bulalo that you cook, the smell drifts out of the window. We think that what's a lot likely to happen is that the local community is going to get angry with you because you're choosing to live entirely separately from them. Right? You're living in your enclave where you are viscerally and very obviously choosing to live separately from them. Right? You are deliberately opting out of the ethnic integration that everybody else was gracious enough to have been able to buy into. Right? We think that's what that culturally diverse community is very likely to look like. Let's first deal with all of these petty feasibility arguments that came out of the opposition. Right? This idea that somehow is problematic for these people to move into the country. The model that we were running was one where these immigrants were going to be paying the same prices as locals. Right? They will be distributed based on a quota system to different places within the country. We don't think that they'll be able to afford to stay in the most expensive places. Very few immigrants actually do, but then again, there are many locals who also live, in the different parts of the island. Right? I think at the point we offer them the same price, that's fine. They wanted to go parallel, run a model where instead we incentivize these people to have a choice. And we think that's equally insidious and equally problematic. We're going to create a clash rather than rather than fall into the silly parallel they wanted to have instead of debate. We think that at the point we offer incentives to these things, all we do is exacerbate and inflame that local disenchantment and anger with these immigrants even more. Because why are they subject to some sort of special privilege, some sort of special incentive? Why are we rewarding them for doing something that the rest of us didn't have to be rewarded for? I think that's something that's even more likely to create local anger at your immigrant populations. Right? So we think that we don't really have a problem with that. We think that it's alright. We think that it's perfectly possible for these ethnic immigrant communities to retain some degree or some facet of their local identity rating everybody else has. In these culturally diverse communities, it is not a situation where these immigrants are pitted against an overwhelming numerical majority that follows a single monolithic culture. I think there's multiple cultures that all interact. You call it Chinese, Malay, Indian, Arabs, others. Right? I think that is not a case where this one culture is going to be singled out for being particularly different. Right? I think that if you Filipinos want to pray, we also have got plenty of Chinese Catholics that also pray. You got Muslims, lots of people fucking pray, right, Mr. Speaker? We don't think that people are going to be singled out simply for being slightly different. Right? We think it's a lot easier for locals to construe or to construct a narrative where these people are somehow different, when they don't interact with these people day to day. Right? It's a lot more difficult to find commonality with another group of individuals when I don't get to see what they do on a day-to-day basis, when I'm unable to interact with them as a human being. Right? Within the political culture that results from the otherization aided by geographic isolation of these particular groups is something that gives rise to more and more negative stereotyping. Let's you defend yourselves from that.
So your model is exactly the same on your side, the model that you're bashing us on, because immigrants still get benefits that citizens don't. How can you avoid the backlash on your side?
What benefits do they get? What benefits do immigrants get if we don't, under their model? Hari didn't say anything about that. Don't put it in his mouth, that's my job. Right? So we think that first of all, like we didn't actually get any more benefit. What we simply do is cause immigrants to be dispersed amongst the locals. I really don't know what you guys are all about. Right? So let's talk now about this idea. Let's talk now about this idea of political divergence. Right? What happens when you have this segregation, right? Moving on from this clash. Right? We think that it becomes, first of all, like I said just now, a lot more easy for them to be dehumanized, for them for their perception to be distorted. Right? But we think that then leads on to political divergence, right? Because the social constantly interweaves and interacts with the political. Right? At the point we have these ethnic policies and these ethnic groups are geographically distributed in certain manners. We think that it creates a perverse incentive for ethnic platforms in elections, in politics, right? Because when we have a group of co-ethnics, right? They all inhabit this same place. We think that the easiest way in order to secure a winning majority in these elections is to run on an ethnic platform. It's extremely easy, extremely convenient for politicians to do. So all run off problems, right? And they were so hard up on getting us to provide harms, right? So here are some harms, right? Think at the point where we have these people who are viscerally and who are very obviously in opposition to what your local communities believe or what their local community identities are. We think it's a lot easier for xenophobia to emerge on both sides, right? We think it's a self-reinforcing system where locals feel as if these people are being segregationists or separatists from the rest of society, and a situation where these immigrants also feel as if they are being preyed upon or being targeted by society. Right? We think at the point where we have spread out, we managed to ignore those problems. Like closing on to talk about schools and distribution. We think that most people tend to go to school within that particular housing area. We think what we eventually have is a system where you have got people in like different maybe have like ethnic schools or like a private madrasas where these individuals are raised from birth without interaction with people from the local community, right? Well, that's exactly the other thing that they had to say, right? This idea that somehow, given that generation after generation, these people interact with only their own people, somehow that's going to make them feel more secure and interacting with the rest of society. We think they're just completely ridiculous and untrue. Right? We think that at the point where you are consistently interacting largely with only one type of person, right? If these people feel as comfortable in the ethnic enclaves as they claim on side opposition, we think they are a lot more likely to remain within those ethnic enclaves for generation after generation. We think that what creates comfort and what creates the ability to interact with other people is first interaction with other people. We think that perhaps first generation immigrants may not be that comfortable. We think that as their children are born into these countries, as they mix, as they learn like perhaps local vernacular and make friends whose skin is different color from their own, right? We think that that's how interaction is going to happen, right? Many of you here in this room are second or third generation Singaporeans, so you are able to look upon a person of a different race and think of them as being your countryman or being a person who believes in the same things as you do. We think that that's an outcome that they're never going to be able to obtain on that side. Right? That was a unique benefit that was brought to you by Uji. We were the only side that were able to show you how we were able to construct and maintain a national identity where people are willing to look upon each other as brothers and sisters. Right? One, where people live together, work together, eat together, and school together. Right? Not one where these individuals are able to indulge in a selfish desire to live separately, to live away, and to be different from everybody else in perpetuity. We're incredibly proud to propose.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for a speech. I now invite the Deputy Option to close up the open house here.
The problem with OG is they never told us what happens when immigrants say no to the incentives they presented under their side. Because let's talk about the Singapore model previously. What did the government do? The government gave immigrants fair price for their current place and forced them to move to HDBs in other locations. There was no real opt-in or opt-out option for immigrants then. They needed to move to an HDB because they wouldn't have a current place to stay anymore, right? And that's the forcibly moving them, which Francis was talking about, which then escalated to all the harms of some people are just not ready to be in a location where they don't feel comfortable in, where they feel like they're going to be discriminated. The previous speaker never really responded to that. All he told us is we're not forcing them because we're giving them a fair price anyway. Giving them a fair price, giving them an HDB, but not giving them an opt-out option is still forcing them when you decide to break up these kinds of enclaves. So we think that opening government completely had no goals in this debate. Before that, several points of rebuttals. The first thing they told us is we're going to move them to HDBs. These HDBs are going to be subsidized anyway. If assuming the best case scenario, it's true that these people are not forced and they have an opt-out option, no thank you, and that's us being generous to them. We're going the posture coming from our side is that it's ineffective in breaking up enclaves, which is their end goal anyway. Because in the status quo, that's already the current model in a lot of countries in the EU, where they try to get immigrants to integrate and give them incentives to move to other parts of the city. But a lot of times these enclaves still exist for the main reason that these immigrants feel like a safe space is much better than moving to another location in the city to be with the rest of the locals. So assuming their scenario, no thank you, where immigrants can say no, we think that it's not going to be effective then in garnering the benefits that OG wanted. But second, assuming the scenario again, where these people are going, where it's going to be so effective, right? And people are suddenly going to flock and accept the offer to get the HDBs. Again, that's being generous to OG. We think this is absolutely bad in terms of integration. Why? Because when you take a look at Singapore now, and its citizens already have been having a hard time in acquiring HDBs, right? Singaporean citizens have to wait 6 years before they get an HDB. They also say it's very expensive now. And if you have a joint income of 15,000, you're not even eligible to get an HDB anymore. And a lot of these Singaporeans are complaining about the fact that they can't access these HDBs in government housing. So no, thank you. That's supposed to be for them. So under the world of opening government, where you decide to subsidize all these immigrants and forcibly out them from their place, then it makes it much harder in terms of acceptance. What is the difference under our model? Where we at least we admit we do give them some form of incentive. No thank you. What we would posture is that these are the people who are firstly going to be much less in number, but second, people also willing to move. What that means is these are the same people confident enough to integrate with Singaporeans, comfortable enough to integrate with Singaporeans, and that's where our benefits lie, as opposed to opening government, right? In Singapore, discrimination does exist in as much as OG wants to say we are a multi-pod of culture anyway. You have real estate agents when I moved here that ask, are you Indian or are you Filipino? Because I don't really like Indians to stay in my place. And when I asked why, they said, oh, they cook too, their spices are too heavy. And basically, they don't have any real reason to do so. That's why it makes it hard to subject people who don't really want to move to this kind of discrimination, to these kinds of areas with that discrimination, especially because we can't assure them of being safe, right? But what was the greatest assumption coming from opening government? They assume that housing is the most effective way in terms of integration. But if you take a look at it, they never really told us why. And I hope CG does a better job in doing so. Because they assume that just because you live close to someone, that means you're suddenly going to be BFFs with them. You're suddenly going to do barbecue parties and cook with them. A lot of times, if you take a look at HDBs, if you take a look at condominiums, people don't necessarily even talk to their neighbors or be close to their neighbors. What we told you is integration happens as well on our side, or even in a better model where you at least interact with them in work, where you have a common line and common conversation to talk about, or in schools where you can be groupings. We think that this form of integration is already sufficient, and at least when these individuals feel like a safe space is necessary to talk to their fellow Filipinos, to share their experiences, that's something we have in our model. So our model is actually the balance of having a safe space and being able to integrate. Let's talk about the immigrant political voice versus the national voice that OG was talking about. Because what's important about enclaves is the idea of political mass lobbying power, which OG said they don't want because it just causes them to be discriminated. We agree that immigrants need more rights within Singapore or US, for example. The question now is, where are these immigrants able to attain political capital to lobby for better anti-discrimination laws and better healthcare? Is it in government's world, where you spread them out across the city to serve as some display or as some social battering ram for Americans or Singaporeans to be like, oh, that's what a Filipino is like, even if there's no real definition to what a Filipino is like, right? We think absolutely not. Because the more forcibly spread out they are, the more of a minority they become in the city. And as a minority, they have no voice and no fellow community to validate their experiences.
Because they're not around fellow Filipinos, it's then easy to question, was I denied of healthcare because the hospital was really just didn't have enough people, for example, or was it more of a systematic form of discrimination? They had no one to validate these types of concerns with. Let's compare this to a world where enclaves exist, and that's why we support them. When you have individuals in one area which share common experiences, the same sufferings, the same struggle to try to fit in a completely new country, due to the proximity of these individuals with one another, they are able to share ways that they feel like they are being discriminated. For example, the denial of healthcare, the low wages. These are things that you can talk about, and from there you can find patterns and understand that these are the ways Filipinos are being discriminated. These are the ways that Indians are being discriminated because of your shared experiences, as opposed to an individual just rationalizing it as maybe this person had a bad day. And because of that, you're able to create political mass, and you're able to understand which issues you should fight for in the government anyway. That's why domestic helpers in Lucky Plaza were able to recognize that their wages were paid too low, and they were able to lobby to have minimum wage here in Singapore. We think that only happens in the places where you do have enclaves and when you have shared experiences. Thank you very much.
I think the leader for speech, just give us a moment. Sorry. If you all look, so you look at the and you're getting from this kind of and you are you looking forward to that? Yeah, wait. So it's good. Oh, okay, now we invite the member government to start the case outside.
It is in the history of many countries where the government forcibly bought over land that you are development. It doesn't even necessarily have to do with breaking up ethnic enclaves. What happens is you target a certain plot of land for redevelopment because land is scarce. You pay them a fair price, you give them subsidized housing elsewhere, and all is well. Like, it's pretty commonly used all over the world. I don't understand why they need to pay that a doomsday scenario won't necessarily occur. And besides which, even in Singapore, we never really did demolish Chinatown, Kampong Glam, or Little India, did we? We left those enclaves there. All we did was to build lots of low-cost housing both within and outside these enclaves, and then use racial quotas to ensure diversity. So not only do we move some people out by through a mechanism I'll explain later, but we also incentivize other people to move in, and that's how you get that mix and blend of cultural diversity. I think this model is far more beneficial than O gave it credit for, because it means that Indian people actually pay the lowest price for HDB flats. By the way, most of what they say about HDB housing is just a blatant lie, nothing to emotion. You don't spend waste any time dealing with it. The waiting time, for example, has fallen to 1.5 years. Right. Whereas there were used like when there are too many, how the quota system works, that when there are too many Chinese people in the block and not enough Indians, anybody who wants to sell his HDB flat can only sell to an Indian family to ensure that the quota still works. So this creates a buyer's market if you're a minority. That's how the market system sort of like subsidizes housing for those people. And that actually deals with the problem that O wanted to talk about. Because whereas in the past, you as a community can refuse to sell your house to an Indian person because you think he's smelly and scary. Now you have no choice but to, because the quotas ensure that you can only succumb and sell to someone who is Indian. And like, that's why these people are actually free to stay anywhere in Singapore and buy a cheaper flat. They are the groups of people who pay the cheapest prices for those flats. Sit down. And they can still very well manifest their own identity. There are these temples scattered all across the country. There are events in communal community centers. They can go back to Little India on the weekends if they really want. Because the fact of the matter is the context of this debate exists in already culturally diverse countries, such that it is not such a strange thing to see and sample a different cuisine. It's not such a strange thing to see Jollibees, right? It's really not that alien that people would naturally have some sort of xenophobic sentiment. We say yes, obviously conflicts do exist as they inevitably do everywhere. But even when it comes to the current example in Singapore, it's largely been accepted. Sure, once in a blue moon, some fella complains about curry being smelly, and the rest of the Singaporeans lambast the stupid fella for making such a racist comment in the first place. So I think like these places tend to be pretty accepting, and it's the fears of the immigrants that forces them to stay entrapped within their communities rather than anything else, right? Like for example, in Singapore, even Valerie Ting and Andrea Soriano can bump into each other at Lucky. They can also organize themselves, right? You want to look for like community and support structure through things like you can set up NGOs, support structures like the CDAC, Mendaki, the Hokkien Rikuan, things like that. Sorry, Rafiq, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, right? Let's talk about integration and characterization of enclaves and why those things are a problem. Because what this allows immigrants to do is create a bubble or comfort zone, and to like put it, where what you do is you transform a local piece of land, usually in a relatively remote and underdeveloped area, to mirror your own country of origin, right? It has to be remote, underdeveloped, because it's a safe space. You're afraid of everyone else, and you want the government to leave you to your own devices, right? So you do some like random part of the country where nobody is there and set up a new community, sort of like what the Jews did. So they hope that they're ignored and left their own devices. So, like when you go overseas, not just in Singapore, okay, let's extend the definition of it. If you go to like Chinatowns or Pakistani enclaves, there are these like small localized communities which are completely disjunct from the rest of the country. And most of these people, therefore, don't go to school or work with the general population as they would like to claim things to be. In fact, the reason why closing opposition believes that people can live and work together is because they live in Singapore, where the racial quota system is already put into place, and that's how those integration processes work, right? When you look at immigrant enclaves all over the world, what they do is they set up their own parallel state functions, their own schools, their own informal economy, and never really like have any dealings with the people outside. It's particularly problematic, right? Because like if you look at the sort of like visceral image that's created, it gives the locals a sense that there's a hostile takeover of a specific part of your country. And that's what really creates a perception of distrust Yes, Robli.
If people don't even feel comfortable to go to a different school outside of the rural area, what makes you think that when you forcibly integrate them, they're going to integrate and talk to these people in the area?
Well, I don't know, like, if you ever go to a different country, when you travel, you go and live in a different country, and you're put in a place where, let's say you go to Korea, you learn that sometimes you have to go to a Korean school. I don't understand that. When you feel like, oh my god, I must kill myself because there are all these Korean people around, and I don't feel comfortable with my own skin. No, right? Especially if you're talking about children, like, they adapt pretty well, like human beings evolve, you know, like, okay, let's move on to my next extension. We're going to talk about why immigrant communities are actually pretty terrible for these people. Because, like, what happens is that first generation of immigrants set up localized businesses, which, yes, provide employment, but very often exploitative in nature. So, like, when you go to the immigrant community, you might find a job, but likely it's one that's below minimum wage, long working hours, poor working conditions. Because A, that's the norm in your home country, B, because you don't know any better, C, because you're afraid of the unknown, so you do not want to look outwards to find other meaningful opportunities, and therefore you're entrapped within those communities, which create a bubble and subjective reality for yourself, right? I think it's untrue that empowers you to mobilize politically and you can share all your experiences, because let's face it, like, a lot of these immigrant communities are made out of people who don't even necessarily have citizenship status and therefore cannot necessarily mobilize themselves. We say if they are way too small, right, the central government is not going to care about them because they don't make up large numbers. If they become big communities, even if you disperse them towards a wide range of areas, there's still going to be a significant minority within those communities, which means that they can still band together and find comfort in celebrating their religious festivities from time to time, should they wish to do so. So we think it's just like not fair and completely unrealistic to suggest that you want to feel completely alone because of our policy. We think our policy strikes a good balance. We're very proud.
In the matter of speech, I now call upon to indicate how shall
Panel, the world, unfortunately, is not Singapore. The world is not Singapore with its public housing, with its ability to put the entire population, 80% of the population, into public housing which is explicitly built for the purpose of enforcing social policy. The world is not Singapore, where you can just go down to town on the weekend and attend whatever temple service you want to attend. In other countries, such as in China, or in the US, or in European countries, where you have to travel great distances to be able to get to the nearest town which has a temple or something to pray, we think that the sense of alienation and isolation that you feel on the other side of the house is far greater. I'm going to be establishing a few things in my speech today. First, I'll establish how communities keep distinctive cultures alive, and why communities specifically are so important for this, which hasn't been done in this debate so far. Second, I'll establish how communities are so important to establish social institutions. And that's why you can't just tell people to go and fucking pray on their side of the house. And finally, I'll establish why in culturally diverse societies especially, it is important for us to retain the unique cultural identities of these specific communities. First, let's take a look at why communities ultimately are so important in keeping distinctive cultures alive, and why all is not well, unlike in Singapore. Mr. Speaker, we think your ability to speak the language where people will understand it, your ability as a Tamil immigrant in the US to be able to speak Tamil, to be able to speak Urdu, to be able to speak the language that you're most comfortable with, to be able to continue to speak with people who understand your cultural background, is something that can only happen when you have a community of people in your neighborhood who can still understand it. Your ability to celebrate festivals such as Hari Raya, your ability to be able to invite over your neighbors for dinner, to be able to continue your cultural traditions and practices, is only possible when you're not a single Muslim family living in a neighborhood in an isolated town in the middle of a suburb in Florida. Your ability to be able to continue cooking your cuisine and to be able to invite mothers over to continue knitting, to be able to continue the cultural traditions of your family, your culture, and your forefathers. It is only possible when you still have those communities to be able to share and be able to keep their cultural knowledge alive in that community. What they are doing on their side of the house is homogenizing and eradicating the cultural identity and ethnic identities of these immigrant communities.
your Syrian immigrant into the UK, for instance, will no longer be able to continue practicing their Islamic faith or their Muslim culture. And that is something that we think is going to be harmful on their side of the house. We further caveat that if, for instance, you are in the US and you're so Americanized and you do not retain that strong sense of your ethnic and cultural identity, and you want to be able to, then it's easier for you to integrate anyway, and you might want to be able to live in the neighborhoods of other communities anyway. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the most distinctive ethnic communities which want to retain that sense of identity with their neighborhood, which need these communities. And for them, you forcibly bring them up. Second, let's take a look at why communities are so important to establish social institutions. Down government bench, we have heard absolutely glib and insensitive responses where they just say, guys, you can just pray, you can just fucking pray and just pray every weekend, right? You can just go down to the temple or just visit Mendaki over the weekend, right? You will be able to have all of these support networks. No, you don't on the other side of the house, because you are only able to group together as a community, fund and pool your resources, and be able to establish a mosque, for instance, in your neighborhood. When you have that sufficient critical mass, enough people who can visit that mosque, enough people who can continue funding that mosque. You're only able to establish the equivalent of Mendaki or the Hokkien Hui Kwan in a country in which, in like a rural suburb in the middle of America, no thank you, when you are able to pool your resources together and have sufficient membership in order to be able to establish those things. So their very analysis of how you have all these social institutions which allows you to continue your way of life is undermined at the point where they choose to break up all of these enclaves and break up of all your communities. You cannot always just go to the temples on the weekend. They said, oh, you can just do it as the Jews did it. How did the Jews did it? Well, there's a Jewish diaspora which is already established in these communities. But on the other side of the house, these immigrants do not have the chance to establish their own distinctive identities, establish the equivalent of their synagogues or their cultural communities or their religious authorities on their side of the house, so that they can continue their way of life. Before I move on, close it.
Like, nobody's saying that if you are two groups of Muslim people, like two families, you cannot stay together. You can still form your small groups. Obviously, if you're an extended family, you go to the same place. We are saying you cannot form an entire town made of 100,000 people.
Yeah, so two Muslim families is not going to be able to establish the mosque that you need to be able to continue visiting every Friday, right? If your side cannot have it both ways, either you disperse them over the community such that there are only 2 or 3 families in each little town and in each neighborhood, or you have them in a sufficient critical mass, such as 20 or 30 families in a neighborhood, which you say is necessary for them to be able to establish all of these cultural traditions and institutions on our side, right? Third, I'm going to provide you now with the justification for why, especially in culturally diverse communities, it is so important for us to be able to continue allowing this to happen. Let's recognize that culturally diverse countries are, by very nature of being culturally diverse, not homogeneous in their identities. We celebrate a diverse range of cultural identities. And that is why, for instance, in America, you might see Jewish communities with their synagogues. You might be able to see a little Italy. You might be able to see a little Sicilian township, which continues producing pizzas and olives. Or you might have a Mexican neighborhood, right, somewhere, which continues to produce like make tacos and be able to sell that, right? We think that ultimately, what many of these religious culturally diverse communities do is that we ultimately need to celebrate the cultural diversity of these countries, is that we think that your right to practice your way of life and have these social institutions are so important because that's what our nation does for you, right? And we think that is why on the other side of the house, when they say that, oh, you should give up your selfish desire to continue practicing your community, that is at the point when they entrench the us versus them mentality. Because at no point in these communities has it been wrong or un-American for you to continue practicing your own culture. It is exactly American or exactly British for you to celebrate your own distinctive cultural and ethnic identity. And we think they should continue to do that. Let's deal with this final point that they have about this entire idea of a hostile takeover and everything. First, I'd like to point out that bigotry and xenophobia is entirely irrational. And we think this is unlikely to change on their side of the house. The person the white American manufacturer who has lost his job is unlikely to suddenly become less Islamophobic just because you shift them into their neighborhood, right? The rhetoric of Donald Trump and the irrational prejudice and xenophobia and hatred of them is likely to still continue on their side of the house. What changes is that you rob these people of their way of life, rob them of their identity, and ultimately erase their ability to practice and be who they are.
I now call for the government to run on case. Hi, Governor.
I think we need to understand what the nature of many of these immigrants that move to these countries are, right? Because when we talk about this notion about immigrant enclaves, that necessarily means that their chances are they're not going to be very rich, right? Which they have already pointed out. And what does this mean, right? It means that when you move to another country, chances are you don't really care about retaining your identity so much as compared to the economic upward mobility, as compared to having some sort of proper, better job prospects. We're not saying in closing that we don't want to have this identity, but we're going to prove to you that even when you forcibly separate them, that's how you actually retain your identity even more. But second of all, let's just first get things right. Right, this whole idea of feasibility that you want to talk about. Yes, it's true that not every country is like Singapore, not every country can have housing. But when you don't forcibly relocate these people, right? We look at the case of Germany, we look at the case of France, when they have enclaves and they build these sort of like HDB-like things, right? Like a building, something like HDB, and move the people there. But nobody wanted to move. Why? Because we talk about the informal economy of these immigrant enclaves, right? Something which Alfred talked about, which they never wanted to engage with us, and we hope that close added that we will somehow engage with this exploitative nature of the informal economy. But never mind that, right? Because we talk about this informal economy, what we talk about? We talk about things like sewing blankets. We talk about things like making mattresses. We see that even in India and Pakistan, right, and in such underdeveloped countries, there are these sort of enclaves that we talk about too, right? Because they move to these countries and create this sort of informal economy, and then move on to actually stay within this exploitative industry. So when we talk about housing, right, the fact is that ultimately a lot of countries have tried to do something about it. But what happens is that if they are not willing to move because they are so comfortably located within their enclave, then what incentives can they actually move? That's why on our side we say let's give them the same sort of subsidies that locals have. Then they say no. Then what happens is that the locals will think of them as why should they come and steal our money? I think that on a comparative, right, when you have locals who hate them because they live in a separate part of the country, as compared to living with them and giving them some money, right, I think that's really not a big issue. But second of all, right, this whole idea of geographical location, how not everybody can just go to Chinatown. We think that, okay, sure, then we think that we have things like social media, like Facebook groups where you can actually communicate with this or with the rest of your country, with the rest of your countrymen. More importantly, we think that within these sort of small countries, we're not talking about Singapore, we talk about, let's say, Western Florida, we talk about Los Angeles, right? We look at in Los Angeles, no thank you. All the Mexicans still continue to meet up regularly if they choose to do so. But more importantly, right, within these small cities that they talk about, they can always easily find enough people to go back to. We think, yes, maybe the malls will be smaller, maybe yes, the festivals will not be so big, but that's a necessary trade-off you have when you leave your country for better job prospects. Right, you cannot simply expect these people to relocate themselves from another country and come to this country and pretend they're still back in the Philippines, still back in Mexico, and continue living their same life. That's just not how the world works, right, ladies and gentlemen? You know that in Western Florida, where there's only less than 10% of Muslims, but there are still sufficient mosques there for them to go to. More importantly, we tell you that in many of these communities, right, when we look at the comparative that they're offering us today, they tell us that integration will happen somehow when you continue living in this isolated community. Let's first realize that the whole of opposition bench never gave us any alternative model as to how we're going to integrate these people. All they wanted to talk about was about how, they can still somehow stay within these enclaves and still mix with the rest of the community. But that's just not how things work, right? Because we are not Singapore, exactly. We are in many countries like the US, like Germany, they are such big countries. How can you expect to live in a remote part of the country and continue to think that you are going to be able to integrate? Right, then we look at the Singapore model, right? And we talk about how not every country is going to be able to accept them about xenophobia, something which Chloe talked about. We think that the examples that they raise are very extremist and in nature, but more importantly, we think that ultimately we think that the country has anti-discriminatory laws anyway, right? We think that if it comes to like local day-by-day insidious discrimination they talk about, then in both models it will still exist, right? Let's talk about which side it exists more. We tell you that when you continue to live isolated from the rest of the country, then that's how you create this sort of self-perpetuating cycle. But it's for that, yes.
All your benefits depend upon proving the link between being neighbors equals to integration. Can you be the first speaker to tell us that just because you live beside somebody, that means you're going to accept them and be BFFs with them?
It's not just about being neighbors, right? It's about going to school with them,
Yeah.
having similar cultures with them, right? They talk about how old they are. We are the fact of the matter, right? We are debating about a culturally diverse country. We're not talking about a country which is predominantly of a single culture. And that's what we need to realize, because these people, these citizens, whether or not they are born and bred or whether or not they move there, are likely to have different cultures anyway. We don't think it's such a big irrational assumption for us to accept that these culturally diverse people are unable to accept a new form of culture that suddenly enters. Because that's just not how the world works, right? Because ultimately, if you already are used to living in people of this with different practices, with different religions, then we don't think that is necessarily the case that they point out that somehow you will actually hate on them or commit some sort of crime against them. But more importantly, we tell you that if they're talking about the retaining of bonds, right, things like kinship and things like that, we tell you that it still happens. Because under our side, we allow you, I mean, we're not allowing you, you still live with your extended family, right? That are the kinds of family bonds and kinship bonds that you really talk about today, right? The larger idea that comes from immigrant and enclaves is that you have a larger group for you to associate with. But more like that, no, this comes with a lot of economic limitations, right? Upward mobility is limited. You have a glass ceiling. Doctor talked about that. He didn't want to engage. We tell you that when you move to this country, right? It creates a very self-perpetuating cycle because you have no incentive to break out of the existing economic structures that are already in place within the immigrant enclaves. Because when you are so comfortable, right, their comfort zone that they talk about, because you are so comfortable, why would you then choose to move out of these countries? But more importantly, we tell you that when they have this strange idea that simply by separating them from the enclaves, their identity is lost. That's necessarily problematic, right? Because if you simply by moving away can lose your identity, then maybe your identity is not that close to you after all. But more importantly, we're telling you that you don't have to forgo your identity. In fact, very often they continue to maintain their national and ethnic identities because they still maintain family ties back home. And that's what links them back to their home countries anyway, right? Because that's for the matter of fact, they are immigrant people. But more importantly, we don't see that when you move into the community, when you realize that people of different cultures are continuing to coexist together, that highlights the differences in cultures, and that necessarily makes you feel more like you can retain this culture in the long run, because you realize that despite having different cooking practices, different prayer practices, different language practices, you can still live together in this culturally diverse country, and that's why we think that we help integration.
Take a moment for speech and now for Robli to round up the case. Hello, here.
I think the key failing of the entire government bench is their failure to recognize that identity can be intersectional. That I can retain my cultural identity while remaining loyal to my country and have a national identity. I think what they further fail to realize as well, that in many instances, the core part of a country's national identity is rooted in the country having different cultural practices, and the ability to continue allowing these cultures to flourish is a core part of their country's national identity. So they cannot assume they will always be mutually exclusive in any and all instances. I have two questions for the House today. Firstly, I want to clear up this whole argument about integration, which achieves it better. And second, I want to talk about the duties of a culturally diverse country, Timothy's extension. Firstly, I want to talk about integration, right? So I think on that house, the main lie down the government bench, both opening and closing, is that when we don't have social interactions, we cannot build a national identity. I think this problem can be cleared up simply by scenario analysis. The first scenario, if society is so closed and society is so discriminatory towards these immigrants, that people don't even dare to go to school outside of their ghettos, that people don't even get there to work outside of the informal economy, I'm going to suggest that forcing these people, to stay together, forcing these people to live together is massively abhorrent because you continue the perpetuation of silent oppressions and microaggressions on every single day. And the worst thing is, when you don't have that support group, it doesn't allow you to give a seat at solace that you so need. And that's why we think that Alfred cannot say that integration will happen because people will now suck up, right?
because it's a crucial qualitative difference. Accepting a policy by sucking my tongue is very different from accepting these immigrants. It's a crucial difference here. But let's try a second scenario analysis. No, thank you. If society is so accepting, right? We think society is so accepting. We think people will still go to school outside of the ghettos anyway, right? If society is so accepting, no, thank you. The people are willing to leave that informal economy to go and work with other people. Then we think that these types of social interactions can exist. What is the upshot? No, thank you. If society is so willing to accept these people, their social interactions can exist. What this means is that the national identity you want on your house can still exist, even if people live in these immigrant ghettos. So I think this is the way we should clear up this whole idea about integration. We think the entire government's idea is just massively warped. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, I'm also going to suggest to you that the core of a country's national identity, especially for culturally diverse societies, is often founded upon them being able to celebrate your cultural diversity. So at a point where you want to homogenize their culture, you want to force people to share similar cultures, this is where I think you fundamentally lose the national identity you so want to protect. What do we hear from the whip? We hear from the whip, but you know it's bad for people to live in informal economy because they are bad jobs. There was a massive contradiction on her side of the house. Why? Because on one hand she said that it's bad for people to be in the informal economy because they are bad jobs. And then on the other hand, she says that people are comfortable with the informal economy because why they won't move out, right? That's a massive contradiction. So thank you. But I'm going to suggest that if the informal economy is so bad, there's so much exploitation. We think a choice exists, and I think that always explained enough about how you can leave this exploitation if you really want to on their side of the house. But I'm going to further suggest to you that exploitation, no thank you, is going to be far worse on their side of the house because they don't have that community to band together to be able to like fight and lobby for a lot of changes that you want on your side of the house. What was the last idea we heard from like closing government? No thank you. We heard this whole idea that the reason why culture can be integrated is because this is a culturally diverse country, right? There are many different cultures, and this means that society is accepting towards their culture. I think it's a qualitative difference. Why? Because I think that the reason why many of these culturally diverse countries can already accept many different cultures, or not accept the immigrant culture, is because many of these cultures have already been established and entrenched in society over a very, very long period of time, which is why society can accept it. No, thank you. This is fundamentally different from a new immigrant culture coming in, that society is not yet used to this culture. That is why we think it takes time for society to accept these cultures, much like how it took time for society to accept all the different types of cultures. That is why we think, no, thank you, that the Jewish are like accepted because the Jewish diaspora has been established over a long period of time. But we think that for many of these immigrants from many of these countries, they are newly coming in, and the integration takes a lot of time. And that's why you can't simply assume that just because we're a culturally diverse country, we can automatically integrate and accept any and all people from any and all cultures. No, thank you. And that is why we think we take the point on integration. But I think let's move on to the crux of this debate on the duties of a culturally diverse country. Because this debate is not just about a debate about integration. It's not a debate about the costs and benefits of integration, but also a debate about the duties that culturally diverse countries owe to their people as well. It's also about the right for individuals to be able to practice their culture in an environment that's free from discrimination. To that end, there are three benefits that we refuse to engage on. The first benefit we told you, thank you, is that the concentration of families is very, very important because it allows for the continued flourishing of a culture. It allows for communities to continue sharing and keep their cultural knowledge and identity. So thank you. Everything being separated means that you're forced to not be able to continue meeting each other. We thought that was abhorrent. But the second reason, perhaps more important reason, is that we think that communities are the bulk of the and the means in which you can form social institutions that can continue the flourishing of their culture. Why? Because at a point where you can group together, you can pool the resources, and you can have the critical mass continue visiting and funding. That gives you the reason to thank you to want to build a mosque for a reason. That gives you a reason to want to build a church for a reason. We think it gives you the membership to be able to establish these types of institutions that are so core and crucial to your culture. What did we hear from the whip speaker? We heard, but there are two ways. The first is social media, and second is people meeting up, right? We think even if people can meet up, right? We think insofar as there are less people, you don't have that critical mass to build institutions. And insofar as institutions like mosques, are so critical to their culture because you can meet each other, but you will not feel that satisfied and that fulfilled with your culture at the point where you can't pray to your God in a mosque. We think you can't allow for the continued actualization and flourishing of their culture. But what is a core of their self-house, I'll take a minute, is that they necessarily have to accept that by the separation, they necessarily want to disincentivize people from going back again. Because if people can go back every single day, there is no integration on their self-house, there's no interaction with their self-house, you necessarily have to consider one or the other. Before I move on, yes.
We've explained that ethnic enclaves occur in geographically distant and remote regions. That's the reason why people don't go to school together, because it's too far, and I have a job, and there's a status quo bias, and I'm afraid of the unknown, right? How do you expect people to integrate if they live in some far-flung corner of the schools?
Sure, I think if I'm afraid of the unknown, I think it's important for you to force me to necessarily face the unknown that I'm so fearful of. I don't see any reason why you can infringe on my cultural rights like that. But I think Like further to that, I think that contradiction on their side of the house is that they have to accept that they want to disincentivize some form of cultural meeting up. Because if I'm going to find my Filipino friends every single day, then there is no type of interaction with the majority culture that they want to talk to on their side of the house. So necessarily, they have to agree to a certain extent that they want to disincentivize some form of meeting up on their side of the house for any of their policies to be effective, which is why we think that allows for the types of disconcentration that prevents the setting up of social institutions that we thought was so important. The last idea which our speakers were fit to deal with is that we told you that the right to practice your way of life is fundamentally intrinsic. Then the speaker cannot tell us there's a necessary trade-off, because things like culture are intrinsic to you. Things like culture and roots are things that you're born with, and we think that you have a right to practice this way of life at any and all costs, and this is what a culturally diverse society should do. At the end of the day, we think that identity is fundamentally intersectional, and in many instances, a national identity of a country comes at the benefit of prioritizing different cultures and different identities will massively stand on the side of closing opposition.
Okay, I think I'm going to debate. Wash hands. You guys will,
No, I think every time I ask, yeah, on the phone, like, are you in here?
Able, how is it? We all debated that. When is that?
what after you end there?
Yeah, Able is apparently still at N. What a rubbish. I suppose. This bottle is nice. It's like if you fill it up with something heavy and freeze it, then you
I don't know.
What is it again?
Roughly, but I still deciding.
Actually, I was doing rankings, right?